It's recording. Okay. All right. In my opinion, it is great to be optimistic and aim high. Yet, without a pragmatic approach and taking into account unexpected circumstances, such as pandemic, it is an attempt in vain to set goals that we already know we are going to miss largely. Audiogram. Am I not saying it right? It's circumstances, right? Okay. I think I say the same thing, but maybe I'm not hearing it. Circumstances. So, what do I say? Oh, you hear an eh. Oh, okay. I don't, but if you do, that's fine. Shall I do it again? Unexpected circumstances. Did I say the same again? Okay. Okay. We go? Welcome to the 4th episode of Scale Your Impact. Thank you for showing up and tuning in. This is the first episode of my podcast series in 2022. I'm quite excited to be back in the studio and start recording again. I've changed the format of my podcasts to make them I've changed the format of my podcasts to make the series more coherent with each other. As you may know, besides Scale Your Impact, I have 3 other podcast series, and in each of them I address some similar issues to which I refer here in Scale Your Impact. In this way, the connection between these podcast series can be more pronounced and clear. Now, with this explanation, let's get into what I have prepared for this episode. In this episode, I will be talking about understanding. Understanding is the first phase of a model that I have developed over the last couple of years in the domain of personal and organizational transformation, as well as change management, or better to say, change leadership. I presented this model last year on 30th of October, a day before my 40th birthday, at the historic academic building of Utrecht University. On my website, you can read more about this event. This model is based on over 350 books and 200 academic articles and policy papers, and I have dubbed it verbinding. Verbinding is the Dutch term for interconnectedness, but with an emotional hint towards interrelatedness. Verbinding has 3 phases. Verbinding has 3 phases, namely understanding, implementing, and scaling. Throughout 2022, I will present parts of this model to you in every episode. And for today's episode, I will talk about the phase 1, understanding. What does it mean to understand, and why is it at the cornerstone of every action that we need and want to take in our lives? I feel a tickle in my voice. Do you hear that too? Yeah, we will. Yeah, exactly. And this part is kind of repeated in all 4 of them. So maybe in another segment we can cut it out and put it in. We'll see. I will also talk about SDG number 1, no poverty, and SDG number 2, zero hunger, and the state of the progress in these 2 goals. Hold on. This is I will share with you how our local communities are an integral. I will share with you how our local communities are an integral element of achieving social protection as part of the targets of SDG number 1, and how from the start the targets of SDG number 2 were unachievable. Go here. We read a lot of news throughout the day and receive tons of information from various resources, but do we really understand what they mean and entail? There are a lot of reports about the progress of Sustainable Development Goals. However, we really do not know what each goal entails and what it is striving to achieve. However, if we really do not know, if we really do not know what each goal entails and what it is striving to achieve, we won't be able to orient ourselves properly to take the right actions toward them. If we do not know what poverty exactly means or what zero hunger goal is tackling, we won't be able to support our community to make sustainable and durable changes in our behavior and actions. In this episode together, we dig into understanding phase of change management model, as well as getting a clear picture of what poverty exactly means according to United Nations standards and definitions. Yes. It's a single because it's a concept. Yeah, great. In this episode, together we dig into understanding phase of my change management model, as well as getting a clear picture of what poverty exactly means, according to United Nations standards and definitions, and how sustainable development goals are aiming at achieving zero hunger. And how sustainable development goals are aiming to achieve by zero hunger. That's the correct one. Before we can move forward, we need to know where we are standing. And to know where we are standing, we need to look back and see where we are coming from. To build a roadmap, we need to have an in-depth understanding of the context in which we operate. And then we need to bring seemingly unlikely allies together and translate our collective vision into a step-by-step plan towards measurable impact in the domain we are working. One of the most interesting things that I've learned in my first year of PhD was that there is a simple rule of thumb for research proposal development. It is said that in our first year we need to read at least 50 academic articles in the domain of our research. Yes, you heard it right, 50, 50. And you need to explore the domain based on the read articles for at least 8 to 10 months. Only after this you can write and present your research proposal. That is why for every PhD candidate there is a milestone to reach in their first year, and that is receiving the approval on their research proposal. Without this approval, the PhD candidate is not allowed to move on to the next phases. This is like the grace or test period. This is like the grace or test period of employment to check whether or not you are the right fit for the organization. Now imagine this in our daily life. If we want to bring about a change because of a challenge that we are facing, we need to first understand the challenge. We need to understand what is the challenge. Are we looking at the symptoms or are we looking at the cause? We need to understand what we have done in the past. We need to understand what we have done in the past to deal with the same similar challenge. How successful were our past efforts? Why do we want to face this challenge at this? Why do we want to face this challenge in the first place? No, I have to say it again. It's a little bit, the screen is a little bit dark for me to read, but I don't think we can do much about it. Yeah. 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 Great. Oh, this is getting really annoying for me that I can't. Yeah, but the problem with Excel in a set of Word is that it jumps and I cannot adjust it to the size of my screen easily. What can I do about this? Jesus, I'm getting really annoyed now. Okay, shall I start from we need to understand? No, there is an or missing there. The same or similar challenge. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No. We need to understand what we have done in the past to deal with the same or similar challenge. How successful were our past efforts? Why do we want to face this challenge in the first place? And what will happen if we do not take action at this moment or later? Answering these questions are like those 50 academic articles that we need to read before coming up with a relevant and sound research question. And then we need to give it some time to settle in and realize what is the urgency in addressing the dilemma we are facing. All right. With this introduction to understanding and why without a deep dive in understanding it is not possible to delve sorry. With this introduction to understanding and why without a deep dive in it, it is impossible to develop a pragmatic solution, now let's look at SDG number 1 and SDG number 2 and understand why they are and understand what they are exactly addressing and what they are trying to achieve. Goal number 1 calls for an end to poverty in all its manifestation by 2030. It also aims to ensure social protection for the poor and vulnerable, increase access to basic services, and support people harmed by climate-related extreme events and other economic, social, and environmental shocks and disasters. The international poverty line is defined at $1.9 or equivalent of 1.67 euro or 1.4 pound. And oh, wacht. The international poverty line is defined at or below $1.9, which is equivalent to 1.6 euro per person per day using 2011 United States dollars purchasing power parity. Now let's get a bit more detail. Oh my god, I'm so stressed now. Okay, hold on. Yeah, but I practiced this like yesterday and the day before, and now I'm still yeah. Yeah, okay. Now let's get a bit more detailed. In the decade beginning in 2002, the proportion of the world's population living below the poverty line dropped by half, from 26% to 13%. Now, at the time of writing the SDGs in 2015, it was assumed that if growth rates during those 10 years prevail for the next 15 years, that is between 2015 and 2030, the global extreme poverty rate will likely fall to 4% by 2030. Assuming that growth benefits all income groups of the population equally. That is a big assumption. However, if the growth rates over the longer period of 20 years prevail, the global poverty rate will likely be around 6%. In other words, eliminating extreme poverty will require a significant change from historical growth rates. The slowdown in progress on poverty reduction since 2015 has been further set back by the COVID-19 pandemic, with the global rate of extreme poverty rising in 2020 for the first time in over 20 years. The triple threats of COVID-19, conflicts, and climate change makes the global goal of ending poverty by 2030 unachievable unless immediate and substantial policy actions are taken. Again, the problem with Excel. The COVID-19 crisis has demonstrated the importance of social protection system for protecting health, employment, and income, with many new social protection measures introduced in 2020 as a result. However, 4 billion people worldwide are still without any social protection, most of whom are poor and vulnerable. By 2020, only 47% of the global population was covered effectively by at least one social protection cash benefit, leaving 4 billion people unprotected. However, between 1st February and 31st December 2020, governments of 209 countries and territories announced more than 1,600 mostly short-term social protection measures in response to the COVID-19 crisis. As was predicted in 2015, and given the